You want to earn a lot of money as a Java developer, right? So today, I'm going to reveal how much money you can earn as a professional Java developer. Coming up.
Java Easy. News, tutorials, tips. Everything you need to know as a beginner Java developer.
Hello there, and a big warm welcome back to the podcast. Now, as usual, just before we start, if you're a complete beginner to Java and you want to get a helping hand getting set up and beginning your Java journey, then go to javaeasily.com and go grab your Java Beginner Starter Kit there. That's javaeasily.com. It's completely free and it gets you up and running with Java in the quickest way possible. So, on to the main content of the episode now, which is an exciting one. It's about how much money you can actually earn as a Java developer. To answer this question, we really have to know about the two different models of work or employment or of engaging with a client to be able to get work. So there are basically two different models you can work under if you're a Java developer. You can either be a contractor or you can be permanent. And we've spoken about these in a previous episode, the differences between contracting and being permanent. But pretty much the differences are that contractors get more money and permanent people get less money, but contractors have more risk, because you're just contracted for a specific period in time. So for example, for a 6-month contract or a 12-month contract or a year, whatever it might be. Whereas permanent jobs or permanent roles are regarded as more secure and so have less risk. But because of that, you don't earn as much as a permanent developer than you would as a contractor. That being said though, you can certainly get some really good money as a permanent person, but it really relies more, I think, on you having a very clear career progression up towards, for example, CTO or something, if you're on a very specific trajectory that way, to be able to get some really good money as chief technology officer in a company. That's a way of getting great money. Or alternatively, maybe you work in one of the banks, for example, and you don't just have a base salary, but you also have some kind of bonuses which go on top of that, which you work for. So every year or maybe every quarter or whatever, you get an extra bonus, which kind of tops up the cash that you earn in that particular position. So yeah, it's definitely possible to get good money as a permanent person. I particularly favor being a contractor though, because not only are you guaranteed to get the good money up front, there's no, I've got to work for a bonus which is performance driven, and if I don't quite meet that performance quota or that performance threshold or performance band or whatever, then I don't get the bonus, or I only get part of the bonus or whatever. With contracting, the more money aspect of it is guaranteed. The rate that you agree on your contract is the rate that you get paid. Obviously, there's tax to come off of that and everything because you work through your own limited company and that kind of thing. But ultimately, you just get more money as a contractor, which is much better. But it's not only about the money side. Being a contractor is nice because it gives you, and I think I touched upon this in another episode, it gives you the ability to be able to punctuate your career at regular intervals. It forces you to reevaluate every 6 months or every 12 months or whatever the contractual period is of your contract. It forces you, when the contract is about to expire, to think, am I happy in this role? Am I learning? Am I growing? Am I contributing? Am I enjoying it? How does my work-life balance feel and that kind of stuff? It forces you to regularly take stock of these things. And I think that's something that doesn't really happen in a permanent position. True, you can have, the organization can have these kind of 360-degree reviews where it's, okay, now we're going to have some kind of meeting about how your career's going and everything, maybe like once a year or whatever annually. But that's more like just going through the motions of working at a company, doing what they want you to do, right? And normally performance appraisals are mainly not necessarily for you, it's really for the company to get more from you. It's not really in your interest, it's in their interest, really. That's a different viewpoint. But yeah, I like the fact that in contracting, it forces me as an independent freelancer to reevaluate my career at different intervals, which is great. Okay, but that's not really what this episode is about. It's about pay and how much you can actually get. So we've spoken about the differences in pay structures. As a contractor, you have your own limited company, you work through the limited company. That is, the contract isn't with you as an individual, it's with the company, and you're like a consultant who just happens to work through that company. And then you take dividends from that company in addition to a salary as well, and that's how you get paid there from a contracting point of view. From a permanent point of view, you just basically get your salary and all of the tax is taken off at source. So you don't have to pay any tax afterwards. It's just basically, it's all paid for you at source. So the company withholds the tax and pays it on your behalf, whereas it's different for a contractor. For a contractor from a tax position, your company earns the money, and then you have to administer the company to be able to pay your own tax. It's called self-assessment in the UK. You pay your own tax, but in addition, you also pay the company's tax on the company's behalf, of course. Packages are different between contractors and permanent people. As we spoke about, permanent people have a base plus bonus plus health insurance. They have budgets for training as well. things like that. They'll oftentimes have a pension or a 401k in the US and that kind of thing, which goes with it. As a contractor, you're on your own as far as that goes. You don't have any training budget. You don't have any health insurance. You got to look after your own pension or any investments you might have for the future. It's really down to you. But that can be nice as well because it means you're autonomous and in control of your own finances and such like. A key part about the difference between contracting and permanent is the fact that when you take a day off, or if you're sick, or if you take a day's leave for whatever reason, then you just don't get paid that money. Whereas if you're a permanent position, or if you're in a permanent role rather, you still get paid if you happen to be off sick or whatever, which is nice. Or if you take time off and it's within the allocated time that is allotted to you for your year's worth of holidays, or the holidays you have available to you during that year rather. Obviously don't have a year off, although I did do that once and it was fantastic. I would recommend that to anybody. Take a year off. Take a year off like I did. Go to the south of France, enjoy yourself for a good long time, and it's really good. Although it's difficult to get back into the tech side when you get back, so I'll tell you. But yeah, anyway, I'm moving off topic. Although what enabled me to do that was the fact that I was earning really good money, and that enabled me to go to the south of France and to do that. But it wasn't as a contractor, it was as a consultant working in a consultancy firm, which I wasn't going to talk about this, but that's also a very good thing worth pointing out, is that if you work as a consultant in a consultancy firm, it's nice because you get the benefit of both worlds, almost, right? You get paid more money, I think, than if you're in a permanent position, if you take out the banks, maybe, okay, and financial institutions, but in general, you get paid more money. You also get to work on different projects, right? Which is nice from a variability point of view, from a being exposed to different types of technologies, different corporate cultures, that kind of thing. That's nice. Frequently, if you have to work not from home, if you have to work away or whatever, you can oftentimes get extra money that comes to you in the form of subsistence allowances and that kind of thing. And also you get a bonus, usually, like a utilization bonus. So if you're fully utilized, you'll get more of a bonus than you would if you were so-called on the bench, which means you're between projects. So that can be a nice way of topping up cash as well, working in a consultancy firm. So that might be, if the idea of contracting appeals to you, but you don't want the inherent risk that goes along with it, you don't want the administrative headache of having to administer your own company and that kind of thing, but you still want to have the variability side, which you don't get with being in a permanent position, and you want to have that option to work for different companies and everything, then yeah, oftentimes getting a job in a consultancy firm is a good way to go. So that was a bit of a detour. But going back to contractors, what we do is we invoice monthly for the hours that we worked or for the days that we worked. It can either be a day rate which you have, or it can be an hourly rate. In the UK, a day rate is popular. That's the amount of money you get paid for a single business day. In Europe, for example, in Amsterdam, where I've worked previously, an hourly rate is more popular. Okay, and day rates can be, in the UK, 450, 500 pounds a day is like a low rate in London, a very low rate in London. You typically want to have at least 600 per day. 600, 625, 650 going into Canary Wharf. So if you look at bank, typically it'd be somewhere between 550, 575 to say like 625. And then if you go, that's in bank, which is in the city of London, which is where some of the financial institutions are. But if you then go to Canary Wharf in London, which is in the east part of London, East London there, you would maybe like 650 plus per day is a good contracting rate, I would say. You can get higher than that as well. But then you're really going down the realm of being very specialized. So either you're like a full stack developer who really knows his or her stuff inside and out, or you're a very competent low level core Java, low latency type developer for trading firms, that kind of thing. You could also go into project management, which you can also then get quite a bit of money with that too. But typically the day rate, I would say, is between 550 and 650-ish per day in London as a contractor. If you go elsewhere in the UK, then it's going to be much lower. If you go in the north and everything, then you're probably looking at 350. It'd be difficult to get 400 maybe per day, I imagine. I once got offered a job. It was in Leeds, which is where I'm from originally, and I managed to get them up to £400 a day for a consultancy firm, which was an amazing rate at the time. Although I didn't go because I was too used to London, so I stayed in London and everything. But it is possible to get still pretty good rates in the north or elsewhere in the country. And it's nice then because you don't have the living costs that you have associated with London. But the way we can get around that in London is to live outside of London in the sticks. So in like Surrey, for example, where I used to live before, and then you just like commute in. So it's about, say, 35 minutes away from central London, and then just commute in each day by train or what have you. But then also you've got to factor in the fact that the train then becomes expensive as well. That's not cheap either. So as contractors, we issue a monthly invoice and we put VAT, that's value added tax, or sales tax for in the US, which you add on top of your invoice. So supposing your invoice is, I don't know, say 10 grand or whatever, then basically you would invoice the 10,000 plus 2,000, which is 20% of 10,000 because the VAT rate is 20% in this particular example. So you'd invoice for 12,000. Now, a nice thing about the UK is that they have this thing called the flat rate scheme, FRS. And what that means is basically if there's a difference between so-called input and output tax, then you're allowed to keep a proportion of the difference for yourself, not strictly for yourself, actually for your company rather. It's important to be clear about that, but to keep a difference and then just pay the remainder back to HMRC, which is also a nice little cash injection as well, which you can profit from as a contractor. Other things contractors do as well is they can put, they make pension contributions. Then you find that the government also puts in, I think it's an equal amount of the pension contribution as well, and that's tax deductible, I think. I'm not overly familiar on the tax side, to be honest, and this episode was really about the rates and the salaries that you can get. But yeah, taking it back to base, London, 550 to 650, that's really where the contract rates are at. In Europe, last time I worked in Amsterdam, I think somewhere between 70 to 75 euros per day, 70 to 75 euros per hour is a good rate. I know you can get higher than that if you're really good. That's also possible. In the US, actually, to be honest, I'm not sure about rates in the US, but I know if you go into dice.com or indeed.com or whatever, you'll be able to find some rates there. But I can only speak to the UK for now and Europe. In terms of salaries, they vary so much for permanent positions in the UK. They really do. It's crazy. You'll have one position which will be like 25 or 30,000 pounds per year, and then you'll have another one which will come along which will be like 80,000 pounds base plus bonuses and everything. And occasionally you get something that comes over which is say like 120-ish, I would say, with a really good bonus, which can be then start to be like comparable with contracting, maybe. But I think really the big sell of being permanent is that you have this kind of idea of job security, which I don't think is necessarily true. I think in these days you can easily find yourself out of a job very easily. I don't think companies respect loyalty like they used to do in the when I was in the old days then, but no, back in the day, they used to really respect loyalty. Nowadays, it's much more about balance sheets and about making sure that the bottom line, that is the profit on a company, is healthy. And the way to do that is to remove a lot of the staff that aren't really producing or responsible for driving that bottom line. Sad fact, but it's true. Although, a nice thing is if you get made redundant, for example, in a permanent position, you get a redundancy payout, which is nice. That is, you get severance pay, whereas you don't get that as a contractor. You just go and that's that. Unless you're like a contract CTO, then maybe sometimes you might get some kind of golden handshake or whatever it's called, where they give you some kind of parting monetary gift or what have you. So yeah, typically I think it's very variable with permanent positions, and it's not incredibly clear cut exactly where the market lies. It just depends. But my feeling, if I had to be pinned down, my feeling is that I think in the UK in general, like 45 to 45, 50k a year is good as a permanent developer. If you're in banking, it's going to be higher than that. If you're in London, it's going to be higher still. So in London, I would say 70 to 80,000 per year is good. Try and get more if you're in banking. But really, on contracting, we spoke about before, between 550 and 650 per day, and say like 350-ish elsewhere. I would say around that, plus or minus 50 quid. But ultimately, I think the thing is with a permanent position, it's more about the opportunity to be able to build your career. So if you really buy into an organization and you love the organization you're with, you really buy into the organization, you're really there for the long haul kind of thing, then you can really go down the career route where you're basically trying to build a career in that particular organization. Anyway, so hopefully that gives you a bit of insight. But ultimately, it's not all about money. Weigh up pros and cons of each, money versus quality of life and that kind of thing, versus your own career prospects and how you want to develop your own career, and also quality of life as well. Like, hybrid roles, maybe you have like a couple of days in the office, then it's 3 days remote, that can be good. Fully remote roles can be great as well. But of course, then you get detached from being in the office and you feel like you're a bit of an outlier just there. So that can be sometimes not great from a mental health perspective. Sometimes it's fine. It depends on you as an individual and how your personality works with that. It can be nice as well to not always have to think, I've got to get a job in central London, for example, which is what I always thought. I had to get a job in central London, had to be in central London, had to be in central. And then when I got a job outside London, I worked for a company in Farnborough, which was about, say, a 35, 40-minute drive, I think it was, from where I lived previously in Surrey. And that was really nice. The first time I'd ever driven my car to work each day and back. I used to drive the car to the train station and then get the train station into London, but that's not really the same thing. But if you're in your own car, you can listen to some podcasts, listen to some nice music or whatever you want. You've got your own space, you get a coffee on. It's very nice. So yeah, sometimes these little things like just being able to drive yourself to and from work in a car and listen to a podcast is worth more, right? Even though it's not worth more monetary wise, but it's worth more quality of life wise. You've got to think of the whole picture here than just always doing the grind, being on the commute, being huddled up like this while you're trying to do whatever you want to do on your phone and everything. So always weigh up different pros and cons in whatever decision you make. Anyway, I hope that was useful. I hope that gave you some good insights into contracting versus permanent and the different pros and cons, but moreover, the actual salaries and money you can make. And until next time, keep happy, keep coding, and speak soon. Cheers, bye.